Hi, I'm Jeff Bermudez.
And I'm Omar Kadri.
Welcome to The Collective Journey.
Join us as we explore some of the most promising talents, thought leaders, and change influencers in our city and beyond.
As we uncover these hidden gems, I hope you'll find that they're people just like you and I, with hopes and dreams and gifts that they would like to show to the world.
It is our mission to share their work, to share their story, and to appreciate what our community is capable of producing.
This is my adventure.
This is your adventure.
This is our collective journey. Welcome to this week's episode of The Collective Journey. Last week we met Sara. She is a founder of a Montreal-based group focused on climate change literacy. We had the pleasure of learning about how she came up and how her life experiences have shaped her vision for the future. Today we conclude our conversation and hopefully leave you all with a positive message on how we all can take action. I bring to you the second installment of Sara Ferwati.
So between my undergrad, I decided to take a year off. I say a year off as if I'm expected to continue my education right after. After my undergrad, I worked for a year. And I worked here at Western, Western International. It's the student office for international students. During my undergrad, I was quite involved in peer mentorship for international students. So when international students come to Canada, it's a positive thing to have for them to receive support, because it's really difficult to sometimes adapt to a new culture. It's hard to live on your own for the first time. Sometimes there could be language barriers, certain prejudices that they feel. So Western University has an international office for international students, and they provide them with a lot of support. And one of the ways that they support them is through a peer mentorship program. And I was a peer mentor for most of my undergrad. And so after that, I took a job there.
Yeah.
I worked there for a while, and then I traveled to Japan, to Okinawa, to do some research. I did biochemistry research in the Okinawa Institute for Science and Technology. Everyone should check it out and go there. It's awesome. So I worked there afterwards, and then I continued research by going to McGill.
Okay.
I did my biochem master's there. At the time, I wanted to do a PhD, but then I had decided to change projects and maybe transfer labs to do a PhD at a different lab after I had finished my master's in biochem in the lab that I had first signed up for. But then I had also applied to the public health program at McGill, public health masters, and it was a moment where I had to sit and reflect. What do I want to do? Do I want to do a PhD in molecular biology and biochemistry, or do I want to do public health? And again, on the side, this is why Climatable is my side gig. On the side, I'm involved with climate change and social, and I have interests in social equity, and so I felt that being in public health would allow me to consolidate both my interests in science as well as my interests in social impact and social issues.
Could you elaborate on the conflict between the two, if there is?
Between what?
Between your passion for science and social equity.
I don't know if it's conflicted per se, but I think when you choose to do when you're in grad studies and you're choosing to do something like lab work, it's a certain lifestyle, and it's a certain there are certain expectations, and I wasn't necessarily I wasn't fulfilled doing lab work 12 hours a day, for example. I enjoyed it. I love biochemistry and I love science, for what it is. But I didn't see it as a career for myself. I didn't see I just couldn't imagine myself doing it in 10 years. And I had to, sit back and think to myself, what drives me? What makes me happy? What values do I want to implement in my work? And what values do I want to work for? And what causes do I care for? And it's something I think about constantly. And that's why I felt that a slight change in careers into public health would allow me to have that social impact, but also use a lot of the science and the skills that I had and combine the two.
Okay. So to build on that, in the field of social equity, what are there any particular issues or areas that you find most resonate with you or find the most pressing in your personal experience?
I think a lot of issues are very intersectional, whether it's climate change, for example. Climate change leads to the mass migration, climate migrants, people moving from their homes, whether it leads to civil unrest. When you have droughts, when you have floods, you have there isn't enough food for everyone, not enough economical opportunities, or not. It leads to, as I said, it leads to civil unrest, people moving. Just the conditions become certain areas become uninhabitable. So with migration, what happens is that I'm Syrian, for example, and so I saw a lot of, I have families that have been refugees. It's something that I'm very privileged. I haven't personally experienced it, but something that literally hit close to home. So to me, it was the relations to that movement of people. How does that affect their health? How does that affect their mental health? How are the countries that are accepting those migrants, do they have the policies and the infrastructure, the health infrastructure to accommodate for them? So I guess I'm interested in refugees and migration and migrants, and the health issues related to that, particularly mental health issues. And we have it right here in Canada. You have Indigenous people. Climate change leads to it impacts their cultural practices. It impacts their way of life. It impacts their community fabric, and that affects their health. That it affects their social interactions, and that it like trickles down into so many different ways. And so my interests are, I do climate change on the side, and it's not my career, but it's related to so many other aspects and things, and it's related to social inequity in the sense that the underprivileged, those in developing countries, will be the ones that are going to be impacted the most by this issue. And what are we going to do to help? And I'm hoping that, I pave a career for myself that allows me to do that.
Yeah. So it's not peripheral. It has a very actual and direct impact on their way of life.
Obviously, I don't think there's a perfect system, or there's a system that's been put in place to address these issues per se. I think because they're very modern issues.
Yeah.
They're issues that people are right now trying to see, how do I help? How do I fix? With regards to the impact of climate change, people are the solution is that we go carbon neutral as a society, as worldwide, not just locally. We need to act locally because that's how it works. But I would hope, or I would like to see, I don't know if it'll happen in my lifetime, but I would like to see our or global society being carbon neutral or phasing out fossil fuels. Cities like Copenhagen are doing such a wonderful job to do so. Vancouver in Canada, that's a home example, that are working really hard to phase out fossil fuels. So that's one aspect of it, because carbon emissions and global warming is one aspect of the inequity that I had talked about. Other aspects of it would be what are the health infrastructure to adapt to, because the disasters that are going to happen, so the disasters that are going to happen from climate change are happening, we need to adapt to it. So how do we create an infrastructure? How do we create health facilities to deal with people leaving their homes, people losing their culture, their identity that's associated with land, with certain practices? How do we care for them? So that's adaptation. And the previous point I had mentioned about phasing out fossil fuels, that's mitigating the problem, preventing it from happening, or we're not preventing it from happening, but we're halting it or preventing from making it worse. Yeah.
Any countries that, from a migration standpoint, have approached it in a way that you would evaluate as headed in the right direction?
From a migration point of view, like what countries have,
I guess, incorporated displaced people or...
well, the example that I have right now in my head is the different countries that have accepted Syrian refugees, whether it's Jordan, Lebanon, Germany, France, Canada. I think it's a global effort. I think countries like Jordan and Lebanon, they don't have the resources. They're already really strained economically, at an economical level, at an infrastructure level, to really take on a great number of migrants or refugees. So the neighboring countries are struggling, and those countries that could do a good job, like Germany did, they are able to because they have the means to. Now, I was reading an essay that had said that the best, most ethical way, perhaps, is for those countries that are able to finance or to support neighboring countries of, in this case, Lebanon and Jordan, in supporting or in accepting refugees, because it's more feasible for the refugees to seek refuge in neighboring countries. There's greater cultural similarities, etc. So that was one approach, is that maybe countries that have the financial means to provide aid to neighboring countries to host. And for example, you're going to have a lot of migrants from Bangladesh, because it's a country that's suffering a lot of floods and soon going to be underwater, and a lot of small island nations, Papua New Guinea. These countries are disappearing. Where are those people going?
I did just want to ask one quick thing here, though. Let's say that there was, hypothetically, there was some person that's completely ignorant to these issues, and, they just didn't see the importance of being environmentally aware.
Mm-hmm.
And if anything, they were stubborn against it, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
What would your approach be towards that kind of a person? How would you try to change their mind? How would you try to enlighten them to be a little bit more considerate of the environment?
I don't think we have time to change the minds of those who are stubborn, in a way. I think it's the best use of, or the most effective way to move forward, is to engage those who are kind of interested, believe in the cause, but don't know what to do. Rather than taking on someone who's a complete denier, not interested in engaging it, doesn't feel like it's going to have any impact, because the amount of energy that goes into changing that person's mind, if that person, of course, is not in a position of power, that's a whole different thing. If they're like a country's leader or a minister, that's problematic. But if they're like the average citizen, then I think it's more wise to spend energy channeling the efforts of those who are a little interested, not sure what to do, into actionable opportunities. But also when those who are passionate about a topic or are advocating about it, they advocate for certain policies and they change certain policies, and these policies are implemented. It doesn't really matter, and if these policies are in favor of climate change, it really doesn't matter whether your neighbor believes in it or not. He's going to continue to recycle. He's going to compost. He's going to, if he's given an electrical car, if that becomes the cultural norm, or if it's easier for him to ride the bus, he's going to do it because that becomes a culture. You create policies and a culture around it.
I imagine that that some of the listeners might have that seed of passion that you're talking about, where they're aware of the issues and they want to do something about it, but at the same time they don't know what the next steps are. They don't know what contributions they can make. So let's say that there was a young listener that was interested in taking a more active approach towards fixing these issues. Based off of your experience, what are some recommendations you would make towards them to get started?
I think I'd like to say that it's a mistake to think that we could make any difference by ourselves. You know, you as an individual, it's not how much you as an individual recycles, or you as an individual. It's not at an individual level. It has to be at a community level. It has to be at a group level. So what I would say is find a local grassroots organization in your community and go to a meeting, or join their next event, because they need people, they need help. We need to collaborate together and put our energy and talents in different ways to advocate for policy. I think real change happens when it's implemented at a policy level. So I would say if someone is interested in the issues of climate change and would like to be more proactive about it, the first thing is join something that's already established, volunteer your time, and see what in your local community is missing, what policies, understand the policies in your municipality, whether it's through, simple policies. We talked about compost and recycling a lot, but things around transportation or, small things. But I would encourage them to join an organization in their city.
Okay. Let's go back to the topic of communities. London and Montreal. What would you say are some of the attitudes or cultural differences that make Montreal more conducive to an environmental approach as to London lacking that?
London is, now I'm speaking purely out of opinion and observation and personal experience and perception.
Yes.
So this isn't the truth, and it's not objective. So it may be flawed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think the nature of any big city is the fact that it does attract, or it does have more people that are, it attracts more younger people, versus a city like London has a lot of students. These students don't reside in London, so they may not be completely 100% invested in London as a community. And you have a lot of families, and the priorities, a lot of working families. So the priorities may differ, or like the demographic may differ in that sense. London is a suburb, more so, and so there's maybe not as much. The meeting grounds aren't as accessible. You know, it's not easy to go to an event and go like, "Hey, you're interested in climate change? Great, me too. Let's talk about this." You know, there aren't as many meeting centers and networking opportunities in around that topic, perhaps. There's more, and that leads to greater advocacy. So when you have that happening at a city like Montreal, Montrealers, or those people that are passionate about this topic and are getting together and talking about it, are going to advocate for their city.
Yeah.
At a political level, versus if that's not happening in London, Ontario, there's not going to be as much advocacy. So there's not going to be as much change. But maybe this stuff is happening and I'm not aware of it, you know, because I don't live here full time, or I don't live here at all, to be fair.
What does the follower base of Climatable look like now, and where would you like to see that head into the next year or the next 5 years?
Oh, wonderful. So let me tell you how it looked like last year, for example. Last year, we get a lot of tractions from students, people who are passionate about the topic of climate change and looking to get more informed or looking for opportunities. So a lot of young people. We've spread our events from being very university focused to more community focused.
Yeah.
So we've attracted a wider demographic. Still, those who are attracted to us are those who already have that seed of interest in them. So where I would see, or I'd hope to see us in the next couple of years, is that continue to attract those with that seed of interest, but to have a more diverse group of people. Our focus are on those who have the energy or the time to channel that into climate action. So whether that could be young professionals or more established individuals, it really doesn't matter.
Okay. Do you intend to have it based in Montreal, or would you like almost like a chapter system?
A chapter system would be nice.
There you go.
If people, you know, we always think big.
Yeah.
But I think before we think big, we really need to establish really great networks and ourselves really strongly in Montreal, because the objective isn't really to get famous and spread ourselves. The objective is to contribute in any way, shape, or form to change in our community. If that's in Montreal, that would be really wonderful. We would like to help Montreal, or, you know, be a small aid in driving Montreal into carbon neutrality. But there are so many great organizations that are currently doing that. Climate Coalition of Montreal, Climate Reality. So there's a lot of people working really hard to do this, and we would just, you know, contribute with whatever way we can into that overall cause.
Okay.
People do need to get into the whole grassroots system. Like, don't want to like expand the cause if at the root of it it's not fully developed.
Absolutely.
Right?
It's when it's very much at a grassroots level, at a local level. That's where action happens. You know, it's but there's a lot of really great international organizations that are doing this type of work. And again, like if you are interested in halting carbon emissions, which is important, which I think we should all have an active role. Like, I'm not a special person sitting here. I'm like, oh yes, I'm an environmentalist. I need to change stuff. We should all, like, I hate the labels, you know, environmentalist, social activist, blah blah blah.
Tree hugger.
There you go. Because I think it allows it. What happens is that it puts all the burden of responsibility on that individual, and it takes away takes away responsibility from everyone and all the other citizens, when in reality this is a collective it should be a collective effort. So I would say for a young person is just the best way to get started, as I said to Omar, find an organization in your community. Find people to support you. No one's expected to do this by themselves. No one's expected to do this by themselves. Individual work is important, but it's not enough for us to make a change. We have to work together as a community. So what I would say is find a group of people. If a community doesn't exist if like a grassroots organization doesn't exist in your community, find a group of people that are passionate about this as much as you do, and talk about, okay, what are some problems that we see in our community? What are the greatest, if you're interested in mitigating the issues of climate, of greenhouse emissions, what are the greatest emitters of greenhouse gases in my community? What are some solutions to them?
Okay.
If you're interested in that, if you're interested in the consequences of climate change, I think that's a bit it's down the line for a lot of people. If you're interested in climate migrants, which is going to be a huge topic in the future, the environmental aspects on health, if you're interested in medicine and science, renewable energy, again, ties both together. But don't do it on your own. It's overwhelming. Find a group of people and talk to them about it, and that's how you move forward. And don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help.
Okay, awesome. Well, this is our favorite part. You can plug everything, every resource, every helpful link that people can go to. Climatable, go promote Climatable right now.
Yes, please. This is your favorite part. So Climatable, you could find us on Facebook at Climatable. That's how you could find it. Climatable. And I would say all the helpful resources there. I would check out Climate Reality, check out David Suzuki Foundation. I would check out C40 Cities. These are just a bunch of helpful resources. It's C40 Cities is a website and an organization that promotes cities to commit to carbon neutrality. Again, local action based. So those are like big organizations that I would encourage people to check out. But also just do a simple Google search. And again, I'm thinking about how to mobilize young people. Look up your community-based organizations in your area and join them. Don't be intimidated. And people are, I have nothing else to plug in.
Thank you for joining us on this episode. If you or someone you know would like to be on the show, contact us through our social media channels. We are on Facebook and Instagram at Collective Journey. And always keep in mind, this is not just my adventure, but it's yours as well. This is our collective journey.